Happy Saturday, everybody. It is a beautiful day here in South Florida, but it is a scorcher. It's hot all up and down the eastern seaboard. Only the Midwest has gotten cooled off by a lot of thunderstorms. I feel bad for those poor people and a lot of tornadoes, too. We've got a lot to unpack for you today. We're going to talk about the case of the missing Legos. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you're really going to want to stay tuned to hear about this. It will really make you upset. Nancy Mace lost her race for governor in South Carolina. We're also going to be talking about Nick Shirley. He's continuing to uncover fraud in California. He had a really good interaction with the UFC champion Colby Covington that we're going to play for you in a bit. And some pretty shocking news happened on the lawn across the street from the back lawn of the White House. We'll show you that in a little bit as well. And then, of course, we're going to talk about Trump has solved the war in Iran again. NBC says that he has made 30 different claims that the war in Iran was over. But this one sounds different. We'll unpack it for you. Today's show is brought to you by Bone Frog Coffee. They are our studio sponsor. We're so happy to have them and the relationship with them. We're also welcoming two new advertisers today, Nessa's Hemp and Masculine Man Essentials. We're going to talk to you about those products during the broadcast today. So stay tuned for that. And thank you and welcome to our new sponsors. All right, let's get into it. All right, so in the state of Oregon, this guy had, in most of his adult life, collected Legos. Now, why a grown man is collecting Legos, don't ask me. But he did. No judging, no judgment. It's just a fact. But he had collected it's a Star Wars set of Legos, whatever that means. I guess they have characters that look like Star Wars characters, and they have the ship and all that stuff made out the form of Legos. So stick with me. It gets better. Don't get antsy. Just be patient. I'm getting there. All right. So this Lego set was worth an astounding $200,000. So the guy, Brian, got sick, and he was really sick. And so his son, wanting to help his father, took the Lego set to the local outlet of Bricks and what's the name of it, Anthony? Bricks and something. Bricks and Fiddlesticks, something like that. I'll get it. Minifigs. That's it. Bricks and Minifigs. Do you know Bricks and Minifigs? I don't. This is the first I've ever heard of them, but they are a nationwide company with over 300 franchises. So they're not inconsequential, and their annual revenues exceed over $100 million. All right. So Brian's son took the $200,000 worth of Legos to the local store in Oregon, the Bricks and Minifig store, and they agreed to take them on consignment. And they said, "Look, we'll try and sell your Lego set, and we'll keep a percentage, and we'll give you the rest." I think it was a third, 2/3, I think. So they actually sold a few, and they paid Brian. And remember, this money was to be used for his medical expenses, and he was in really bad shape. Then the local minifig store, Bricks and Minifig store, fell on hard times, and they decided that they were going to go out of business. But the franchisor came in and installed 2 clowns to take over the store. Well, when these clowns came and took over the store, they denied that they knew anything about the consignment. Well, they lied because this YouTuber named Reckless Ben caught them on video acknowledging that they knew that the Legos did not belong to the store, that they really belonged to Brian, who was dying. He was elderly. But they just savagely tried to keep the Legos for themselves. Enter Reckless Ben. Well, he found out that these two clowns were actually in Utah, and he went there to confront them on camera. It has taken a nasty turn for the worse, and Reckless Ben's videos have gone viral. They have blown up. Here is Reckless Ben talking about what he uncovered. Listen to this now. You're not going to believe this stuff.
Any closer to finding the Lego? I mean, how's the family doing at this point?
So we raised, I think, $200,000, which was more than what he's expecting to make in the thing, because he already got paid out from the previous owner some. It's kind of a complicated story, but we raised all the money for the GoFundMe within 12 hours. So the family's been made whole. The only thing that sucks, though, is the company is now suing the family for whatever. It wasn't enough for them to steal from them. Now they have to also, on top of that, sue him for RICO charges.
I mean, that is just deplorable. I mean, this, folks, this story shows so much evil and just reckless disregard for the truth and for a fellow human being. So what happened? You heard the buildup. Effectively, Bricks and Minifigs asserted ownership over the Legos, or their new franchisee did. And they were in there tacitly supporting them. But instead of saying, hey, we screwed up, here are your Legos back, they got caught on film acknowledging that the Legos did not belong to them. So Reckless Ben started a GoFundMe page for the elderly man that was dying. And that's what he was talking about. They raised over $200,000 that went to him. But the fact of the matter is now the GoFundMe fund is up to $450,000. And so instead of saying, you know, I'm happy that this all worked out for you, they have sued the elderly man that they tried to rip off under some kind of RICO charges. I don't get it. If anybody's guilty of RICO, it's Bricks and Minifigs and their franchisee. But they've tried to use the best defense, which is, in their case now, lawfare. They're going after this poor guy because they smell money. $450,000 in the GoFundMe page. They're licking their chops. They want to try and figure out a way to get some of that money. How deplorable. And so then Reckless Ben, this guy is so clever, y'all. He wanted to sue them, but he went to the new franchisee's house to serve him papers. And he even got the police to go try and serve them papers. The police came back and said, oh, we can't serve him because he doesn't want the papers. Well, what defendant in the lawsuit does want the papers? That's not how it works. You hand him the papers. If he doesn't take it, you lay him down on the ground in front of him and say, you've been served. But instead, the cops sided with the franchisee, the new franchisee, and Bricks and Minifigs. They all could have just made this go away so quickly if they just had said, hey, we screwed up. We made a mistake. Here are your Legos back, and good luck. But they didn't. They tried to play games, and then they invoked lawfare. It has just turned horrible for them, and their lawsuits coming out all over the place. And so the Bricks and Minifigs CEO, I don't know who his crisis management advisor is, but surely he's hired them by now because everything they've done has been the wrong thing. Here's Reckless Ben talking to the franchisor, Bricks and Minifigs.
So what's going on?
So you guys are holding some of our Legos?
No, we're not.
You're not?
No.
Is that a lie?
No.
That's a lie. You did take the Legos.
No. So we have, our attorneys have visited, like, again, so who's,
Brian Mansell.
Okay, and who is that?
He's a guy who had he had like $200,000 worth of Legos in your guys' store.
Nope. Never happened.
I mean, it did happen, yeah. It does happen.
No, we did not.
Yeah, because his Legos were in the store and you guys took them. I know you think lying to us right now is kind of like helping you out.
I'm not lying to you.
Well, look, we both know you're lying, but...
No, we don't know that.
So I showed him some social media posts his own company made that are still up that claims that these are Brian Mansell's Lego sets. And these Lego sets that they're still holding on to are worth $200,000. All of these claims are from his own company.
So the CEO of Bricks and Minifigs just tried to lie his way out of it with Reckless Ben, and it didn't work because Reckless Ben has the receipts, and he is just, really done a number on these people. Well, I just cannot believe this can happen in the United States of America. What has Bricks and Minifigs done? They have gone and filed a lawsuit now against Reckless Ben. He should be the hero, and they're trying to sue him. Here's another clip.
Episode 3 is finally finished after crazy all-nighters and basically destroying my health. But I can't post it or I will go to jail. And not only that, I will also immediately lose my lawsuit of $300,000, and the GoFundMe we made for Brian will go straight to this mystery company that I am no longer allowed to talk about. I am no longer allowed to even mention this mystery company. My personal opinion is that this is unfair because this order was put on me because this company was telling the court that I was making bomb threats. I was planning on murdering the manager and employees, which obviously I didn't do, and you can see that in the footage. The only problem is I was not given a chance to share my side. The court just heard their perspective, not mine. So because I wasn't able to share my side, I am now no longer allowed to talk about them, and looks like this might be it.
So that was the last word out of Ben. He put that video up a couple of days ago. I guess it's been 3 days now, and he's gone radio silent since then because, what happened is I explained to you how Brian and his son turned the Legos over to Bricks and Minifigs store. The person who owned the store was got in financial trouble. So they exited the business, and Bricks and Minifigs put these new people in who played fast and loose with the truth and tried to keep the Legos and sell them for themselves. If that's not theft and conversion, I don't know what it is. But so then this clown, number 3 clown, the CEO of Bricks and Minifigs, he just tries to lie his way out of it. Well, now when all hell's broken loose and Reckless Ben, I mean, he's 30 years old. He's really smart. When he couldn't serve the franchisee because they said that he was trespassing and he didn't want to get arrested for trespass, so he hired a process server. They made stuff up about the process server, said that this person wasn't really a process server, but Reckless Ben went through the criteria for a process server. She checks every box, but then she got cold feet because she thought she might get arrested by going onto this guy's property, but she had every lawful right to do so, to serve him with a complaint. And then the police tried to serve the complaint. They didn't try very hard because they brought it back and said, well, we can't serve it on him. So what Reckless Ben did, he went and sold the Legos to 10 different people, and then filed small claims actions on behalf of the 10 different people, and used the jurisdictional limits of the small claims court. And then Bricks and Minifigs franchisee, they didn't answer the small claims actions. So Reckless Ben and his 10 plaintiffs got default judgments. Well, now, so he's got the police backed into a corner because they behaved very badly. I told you about not serving the papers, which they agreed to do. I mean, you can watch it on video. If you go to Reckless Ben, you can see this whole thing played out. I got to warn you, it's going to sop up about 5 or 6 hours of your time because it just goes on and on and on. But then the community, American Forks, is a very small place. And like everybody in the community belongs to the Mormon church, and they all go to church together. And, you know, a lot of people online are calling it a clan, that they're watching each other's back. And even the police officers go to the Mormon church, and the guys with Bricks and Minifigs go to the Mormon church. And I'm not editorializing about the Mormon church. I'm just stating the facts. But it very much does feel like not only the company and the franchisee and the police may not be tacitly acting, coordinating, but it sure appears that they are supporting one another, because now they've gone after Reckless Ben. They've sued him alleging stalking. And I've looked at the complaint for stalking. I don't think it meets the criteria. It requires that the person who is being stalked is fearful for their safety. And certainly Reckless Ben, they claim that Reckless Ben threatened to murder them and threatened to blow them up. But Reckless Ben videoed every interaction he had with them. And that never happened. They just completely made it up. So there's no way, in my view, as a lawyer, that their claim that Ben stalked them is sustainable, because a reasonable person would not think this curly-haired kid with red hair and a video camera is a threat to them. Actually, just the reverse would be true in my view. And then they are claiming that Reckless Ben has harassed them. And they may feel harassed, but I don't think that it meets the criteria for harassment. The things that Reckless Ben did was he put a microphone in their face. They declined to engage with him, and so he left. They put a sign up in a public right-of-way across the street from one of the franchisees' house that said, "These people steal from old, dying people." I mean, it just happens to be true, but you know, that is protected under the First Amendment, freedom of speech. And so, but the reality is, whether they're right or wrong, they've gotten this into the court system. All right, here's the last shoe to drop. The judge, he's the same judge in the Charlie Kirk murder case. And what did the judge do as soon as he got the case? He ordered Reckless Ben to take down his videos, not to publish any more videos where he names Bricks and Minifigs or the franchisees nor the CEO, and has threatened to put him in jail if he does, and confiscate the money that is in the GoFundMe fund. So what did GoFundMe do? They took down the GoFundMe page for about a day, and now they've restored it. The Bricks and Minifigs also communicated with the CEO of Patreon and said, take down Reckless Ben's Patreon page, to which the CEO of Patreon said, go pound sand. You can stuff it. I'm not taking down his Patreon page. So, I mean, this to me just illustrates how lawfare can be used even in private settings and in contract disputes, and in now abridgment of Reckless Ben's First Amendment rights. And he's also being falsely prosecuted. Oh, I left out an important point on the police. Not only did they not serve the papers like they said they would, and they used a lousy excuse for not doing it. That excuse does not hold water. But they also stopped the car that Reckless Ben was riding in and charged the driver of the car, who's Ben's friend, with having failed to stop at a stop sign. The only problem is Reckless Ben did an open records request on the cop's dash cam, and you can very clearly see that the car came to a complete stop for like 2 seconds. There's no way that ticket gets sustained. So, and this is the last thing I'm going to tell you. These guys have acted so badly. They told the police that Reckless Ben had made terroristic threats against them. I explained that to you. But they also said that they had heroin in their Airbnb. So what did the police do next? They went and swatted them. They went and arrested Ben and his friends solely based on that allegation. They put them in handcuffs. They detained them and took Ben into the police station to be questioned. And they ransacked the Airbnb and the car that Ben was riding in. They conducted basically an illegal search and seizure without probable cause. Now, you could say that the people that told them that they had heroin gave them probable cause. And I think that's a very close case. Now, had the police not known everything that was going on, I would maybe say, okay, they had probable cause based on that confidential informant, but he wasn't confidential. But it was clearly retribution and retaliation and intimidation for what Reckless Ben was doing. So you know by now, we've been together on this show now almost 4 full years. And if you don't know me by now, one thing I'm sure that you do know, I hate, and I mean in all capital letters. The Bible tells you not to hate. I don't hate people, but I hate injustice. This is the most flagrant case and example of injustice that I have. It's as bad as I've ever seen. And the fact that the company and the new franchisees could co-opt the police and get them to help them do their dirty work is just apocryphal. And is it because they all go to the same church together? I'll leave that to you to figure out. But I'll continue to keep you posted on this story. And I hope these people pay. I really think that Bricks and Minifigs, the backlash has been unbelievable. People's hair is on fire over this. It is probably one of the most viral stories that has occurred in 2026 on the internet. And I don't know what the rest of 2026 has in store for us, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was the number one viral story of this year, maybe one of the biggest of the decade, because people are just crazy, going crazy over what's happened. And as illustrated by the fact that they've donated almost $500,000 for Brian's GoFundMe page to get him the medical attention he needs. I hope that Brian and his son will re-gift a lot of that. I don't know how that could work, but I hope they'll re-gift it to Reckless Ben's legal defense fund, because Reckless Ben now has to go defend all this in court against a judge who is happy to listen to Bricks and Minifigs story, but didn't have the willingness, or did not allow Reckless Ben to come into court to refute any of it. Well, at this stage, it's just allegations. You know, you can sue anybody for anything, and it's done on what's called information and belief. the defendant really doesn't get to answer at that point in the proceedings. But the fact that the judge placed a gag order on Ben, I think is disgraceful. And I hope the judge pays a price for that. He should be removed from the bench. Someone should seek to have him removed and file bar complaints. And wherever in Utah you complain about attorneys, I guess to the local bar. I don't know the mechanics in Utah, but I think he has demonstrated that he is unfit to serve on the bench. Now, what I hope will happen, Ben's got to get legal counsel. I'm sure that he has by now. The first thing the lawyers are going to do is seek to dismiss the criminal charges, and then they'll file a summary judgment on the civil suit that Ben has been served with. Oh, that's the other thing. Ben couldn't serve the bad guys by going to their house and handing them the paper that they rejected and that the police rejected, but the judge allowed them to perfect service on Ben through email. I've never heard of that. I've never heard of that before. Oh, man, it's working me up. I'll keep you posted on it. Today's broadcast studio sponsor is Bone Frog Coffee. You know about it. If you grind through the day like I do, you need that perfect pick-me-up without the jitters. Grab Bone Frog Coffee. And best of all, coming up on our 250th anniversary and where all our patriotism is going to be on full display, Bone Frog is veteran-owned, founded by Navy SEAL Tim Cruikshank as a tribute to his fallen teammates in the Naval Special Forces community. Each bag tells a story and gives a peek behind the curtain of special ops. If you don't already know it, the Bone Frog is a sacred symbol of the SEAL teams, and that represents those who gave their lives in combat and is a reminder of the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom and the American ways of life. Every bag, premium, small batch, roasted from top shelf Arabica beans, smooth, low acid, no Robusta junk. Think bold blends like Frogman Dark Roast or classic Bone Frog Medium. Tastes like freedom in a cup to me. Helen and I start every day with a couple of cups of Bone Frog coffee. And here is the real deal. A chunk of every sale goes straight to helping SEAL vets and Gold Star families. They're aiming for $500,000 to be raised. Coffee with a cause? You bet. That's not a slogan. It's brotherhood brewed daily. Head over to bonefrogcoffee.com. Snag some K-Cups, whole bean, or merchandise. Be sure to use the promo code TRUTH. Start your day like we do. Fuel up, stay sharp, and remember, service before self. Support our vets, and thank you, Bone Frog, for sponsoring our studio. Check them out now at www.bonefrogcoffee.com and use that truth discount code. All right, well, I'd hate to be the bearer of this news. Nancy Mace gave up her seat in Congress. She didn't give it up, but she didn't run for re-election. Instead, she ran for governor of South Carolina. You know, that's where that Nikki Haley used to be governor. Not one of my favorites. But Nancy Mace is, because I believe she stands on principle. And one of my biggest disappointments in life today is that it doesn't get you much, it doesn't seem. It didn't get Reckless Ben much for standing on principle against bricks and minifigs. And it didn't get Nancy Mace much because she lost. In fact, she came out fifth. Here's what she had to say about it.
I voted to release the Epstein files and lost some support for that. As a survivor, I chose to stand on principle and stand against the Epstein cover-up. I chose to stand against child rapists. I chose to expose the names hidden in the sexual harassment slush fund. I chose to expose DEI judges. And I chose to expose the abusers of children. And apparently, I chose wrong if the goal was winning an election. I'm at peace with that Because when a candidate is okay with corruption, when a candidate is okay with cover-ups, something is broken. And that's not political opinion, that is a moral emergency.
So that's like 3 casualties in Congress, 3 Republican casualties over the Epstein files. Representative Mace, who you just heard from, then Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia. She voted to release the Epstein files. And what did Trump do? He said, I'm going to primary her. And then Tom Massey from Kentucky, Trump primaried him and Massey lost. So you folks know I love Trump. I defend him. I support him. I cheer for him. I think he is, without question, the best president of my lifetime, possibly the best president since the country began. I really do believe that. But I do not like what he did to Thomas Massey. I don't like what he did to Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I don't even like her. I love her rhetoric. I love her dogma. I like the way she votes, but as a person, I do not like her. She's a nasty woman. I'm sorry, it's true. But I really like Nancy Mace, although I've never met her, and I've never met Thomas Massey either, for that matter. But here's the point that I'm trying to make. I'm not picking sides. Well, yeah, I am. I am. We cannot be a party that has to fall in line and stand and salute the President of the United States and do everything he tells you to do. Is that what you want your representative to do? That's what the Democrats do. That's what we complained about with Nancy Pelosi when she was Speaker of the House, because she whipped them all into shape. You could not disagree with Biden and Pelosi and the Democrats' agenda and Schumer without being severely punished like they did to Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard said, screw you, I'm out of here. So she went and joined the Republican Party. But now we're turning out not to be much different. Now, when it works to our advantage, when we like it because we get our way, and we like it, and we think, well, that's okay. What about when we don't get our way? I just come from a different perspective. I trust Trump. I support him. I do not support him in the way that he's handled the Epstein files. His defense was that it's going to hurt a lot of my friends. I'm sorry, Mr. President. Those friends of yours who committed immoral acts and abused people underage do not warrant protection. But I have said consistently on this program that I too am not as concerned or invested in getting the list, because I don't think you can get the list and reveal it without hurting innocent people. Now, I used to think that the Secretary of Commerce was one of those people. He made a very definitive statement that he never visited Epstein Island, and that he only had a casual relationship with Epstein, and he only visited his house once when he moved next door to him. What's his name, Anthony? The Secretary of Commerce. What's his name? Howard Lutnick. I don't have anything against Howard Lutnick. The only thing I have against Howard Lutnick is he lied. He lied to the American people. Well, I don't want to enable or protect liars. I'm sorry he's your friend. I'm sorry he's the Secretary of Commerce. I mean, I like him from a policy standpoint. I like what I have heard that he says. But I do not like liars. And I'm not talking about white liars. That's not a racial statement. I'm talking about white lies. I don't dislike people so much that tell little white lies, okay? I'm sorry, there is a difference. When Trump said that his first inauguration was the inauguration attended by more people in the history of our country, and then they put up scenes of Obama's inauguration and Trump's inauguration, and Trump's paled by comparison. I just chalk that up to who cares? And Mr. President, you shouldn't care enough to be willing to lie about it, even though it's a white lie. But if you're going to lie about that, what else are you going to lie about? That's the problem. And in our culture today, we just accept that all politicians lie. Well, how many people attended Trump's inauguration the first time is immaterial to me. I don't care. I put that in the compartment of a white lie. Those of you who listen to the program know that I love my wife. You know that we've been married 48 years. I think she is adorable. She is prone to telling white lies. And most of them are really kind of cute. They're kind of funny. But they're still not truthful. And she doesn't tell them acknowledgingly that they're white lies. And so we quarrel about that. Not viciously. It's not a deal breaker. But when you're protecting people like Howard Lutnick, I'm sorry, Mr. Lutnick, I like you. I support you. I don't think that Howard Lutnick went there and participated in the immoral acts. I don't have any reason to believe that. But I do have reason to believe, we all do, that he lied about it, because he did go. I'm pretty sure that when he went, it was with his wife and child. And that was after they had the creepy encounter with him when they went next door to introduce themselves to their new neighbor. And they said they were revolted. They were freaked out. They left and never engaged with him again. And then when the files got dumped, we learned that that was not truthful. So I have an issue with that. Is it a deal breaker? I don't think so. If he had not gone there, if he had gone there without his wife and child, that it would be another matter. But all I'm trying to get to is the Epstein story is one that just will not go away. In fact, Bill Gates went before Congress this week and was grilled about his association with Epstein. He offered a mea culpa and said that he never had sex with underage women. My wife and I watched that interview together, and my wife said, "I believe him," and I'm neutral. I don't know whether to believe him or not. We know without question that he cheated on his wife, as do half the married men in America and half the married women in America, which really doesn't have anything to do with it, because cheating is cheating is cheating. It's not right. The Bible says you can't do that. So, you play with the devil, you're going to get burned. And I think Gates got burned. I'm kind of neutral, I guess, on whether I believe he had sex with underage people. He claims that he didn't. I haven't seen evidence to the contrary. But he clearly does not deny that he cheated on his wife, and it got pretty tough to listen to. I'm not going to go there. I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not one of those people. I don't want to be judgmental. All I'm trying to do is say that the excuse that some of my friends could get hurt is not an acceptable reason for me. Now, if he had gone further and said a lot of innocent people will get hurt, then I'd be right there with him. So, to me, I don't know how you would do it. And I don't think one size fits all. I would have preferred some sort of a qualification on people's names before we start releasing them about, well, did you have sex with young girls? Sorry, you don't get any pass. No, we're not going to protect you. Did you visit Epstein Island but did not engage in sexual activity with minors? I don't think that they should be thrown under the bus if that is the case. But who knows? Bill Clinton said, yeah, I went there, but I never had sex with underage girls. So you going to believe him? Well, I guess it depends on what is. So it's a tough one. But I've said time and time again, and I'll continue to say it, it's not the list that I'm as concerned about. I mean, I am concerned about the victims, make no mistake. And I do feel like that they should be able to get justice. And right now that means being able to confront the people who abused them. But what I'm really most concerned about, which is not to trivialize that part, is who sponsored it? Who enabled Jeffrey Epstein to do this? And you know that the allegation is it's CIA or Mossad or both. That is what concerns me even more, because that elevates their culpability tremendously. They are, if there was a RICO charge, they would be named as defendants. But I just got so off track and down into the weeds, back on Epstein again. The real point that I was trying to make is punishing Nancy Mace, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Thomas Massey for having a backbone to stand up in the face of evil is just not right. And I don't like it. And I think it is wrong, Mr. President, for you to have gone there. Because they voted to release the Epstein files, you primaried them? That doesn't work for me. That does not work for me. Does it work for you, my listeners? Let me know. Write to me, johngordontruth@gmail.com. I'll read every one of them. I really want to know. You know, there's this belief, there's this culture that has been grown up around Trump that you have to agree with everything he does, including changing the name of the Kennedy Center to the Trump Kennedy Center. I'm not down with that. And hanging his name everywhere. That's what people do for great presidents in memoriam. It's not what the people do for themselves. I'm not down with that. But it's not a deal breaker for me. It's not a deal breaker for me. Guy's got an ego. All right. Just like the story I've told you all so many times before, you got to take the bad with the good. And those aren't deal breakers. I don't like it. I wish that he wouldn't. I think every city in America would have a Donald J. Trump Boulevard if he would step back and allow those people to do it. And it would mean a whole lot more than it does when he does it for himself. But it's not a deal breaker. The things I care about are our safety. And we're watching it in real time. Trump has made the world a safer place. He gets an A+. An A+. You want to debate the war in Iran? Please write to me. I'd love to have you on the show. We'll debate it on the air. The nuclear thing, I'm conflicted on Were they really a month away from enriching uranium? I'm not convinced. The reason I'm not convinced is because Netanyahu told us 10 years ago that the Iranians were 30 days away from having a nuclear weapon. 10 years later, we're using the same talk track. But what we're not conflicted on, what we're not confused about, what we know with certainty is that this 2-page document in fine print chronicling every terrorist act that has occurred that Iran has either participated in directly or sponsored and did so indirectly since the taking of our embassy in 1978 is justification in and of itself. Add on top of that the killing of 43,000 of their own people since January of this year. There's a name for that. It's called genocide. That is provocation enough. So I salute, I applaud, I cheer our president and his administration for finally having the guts to do what Reagan didn't do, what Bush didn't do, what Clinton didn't do, what Obama didn't do, what George W. didn't do. Nobody had the courage to stand up to Iran but Donald J. Trump, and he did it at the worst possible time for him and the Republicans politically right before the midterms. Meanwhile, we're just watching flagrant, in your face, stealing of an election in California. Spencer Pratt was trailing Karen Bass by a hefty margin, but enough that he was going to get into the runoff. And this guy has come out of nowhere, and he has resonated with the people of Los Angeles and really the entire country. He was a threat to Karen Bass in LA. And if you're a threat to the leftist, liberal, Democratic mayor of LA, you're a threat to the leftist, liberal, Democratic machine in California. That's why they could not and cannot let Spencer Pratt get into a runoff against Karen Bass, because he might just win and the whole house of cards might come tumbling down. They had to nip it in the bud, and nip it in the bud they did. One batch of ballots, 28,000, did not contain a single ballot scored for Spencer Pratt, and those were delivered after the polls closed. And they are still counting. They can't get the votes counted. You know why they can't get the votes counted? Because they don't know how many fake fraud votes they've got to manufacture to make sure that the third place person gets in a runoff against Karen Bass, and she doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell of beating Karen Bass, because she's almost as bad. She's a admitted socialist. So it's bad. It is bad. And fraud is coming from everywhere. There's there are allegations flying about the elections board failing to enforce signature matching. And they've said, oh no, we've sent back 9,700 signatures that don't match, and 2,991 unsigned ballots. What we don't know is who those ballots were scored for. This show is called The Truth, and I'm not going to make stuff up. The fact of the matter is we just don't know who they were scored for. I have a guess. I have a suspicion. The ones that were sent back, I'm betting, were scored for Spencer Pratt, because they weren't counted. They were rejected. Oh, Lord have mercy. I mean, do you remember in 2020 how shocked we were that the election was stolen from Donald Trump? And here we are 6 years later talking about stolen elections like it's just ho-hum, business as usual. Oh, well, another election stolen. I want it stopped. I've done everything I can as one individual to inject myself into the process to try and stop election fraud. I did it for 2.5, 3 years in Georgia. I ran for attorney general based on election integrity. I spent $1 million of my own money and 3 months of my life working as hard as I have ever worked, campaigning. And we did good. We did real good. We just didn't do good enough. I think we got 27% of the vote. Just under 300,000. You know, I watched them report the absentee ballots as they counted them after the polls closed. And Chris Carr was getting like every absentee ballot. They were determined that I wasn't going to get 300,000. So I went from like 295,000 maybe all the way up to 297,000. They let me get another 2,000 votes from the absentee ballots. I knew right then that the election was a sham. Georgia is pathetic. And it all traces back to Brian Kemp, Brad Raffensperger, and his minions, Gabe Sterling, and his chief of staff, Ms. Fooch, whatever her name is. And then another guy that I used to really like, the in-house counsel, former in-house counsel for the SOS, Germany, Ryan Germany. My kids played with him in Little League. Know his mom and dad. I love them. He was every bit a part of it and lied on social media about the safe, secure election. It's damnable. It is damnable. I told him, I said, you're going to regret having done this because you just cost yourself a wonderful career. He didn't listen. Anyway, all right. So the election fraud keeps playing out. Here's what Nick Shirley has to say about it.
I was curious, how come in California you don't need voter ID to vote?
Because when you sign your affidavit, you're swearing that you're telling us the truth, and we compare the signature that you put on your application to the
battery 65%.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it leaves any room for error with voter ID, or? Yeah, I'm just like curious because I want to make sure that like our elections are as fair and honest as possible, and I feel like voter ID is just something super simple to have. And do you think it's possible like illegal migrants could be voting?
Not really. How? I mean, what's showing their ID?
Yeah, if they don't have their ID and they could just sign on behalf of Richard Sherman, then they could technically vote, right? Yeah, but what if they just don't care? What if like Richard Sherman and Billy Bob Joe just don't care? But so you don't think illegals would ever vote, would you?
I don't think so.
No.
So instead of showing your ID, you sign your signature and then it is scanned to verify it is you. So technically speaking, anyone could show up saying they are someone, and if the signature is similar, that vote will then count. And with millions of people voting, it leaves room for fraud to occur. Just take these two examples.
A Southern California woman is facing 5 felonies after registering her dog to vote in 2 elections. The dog's vote was even counted in one of those elections. Those behind the stunt say she did it to show the flaws of the current system.
Hundreds of people who cast votes according to state records, but we found they've been dead for years, including a woman who died in 1988, and records show she somehow voted in 2014, 26 years after she passed away. Then there's Julita Abutin. Records show she voted in Norwalk in 2014, 2012, 2010, and 2008. The only problem is she's buried here at Forest Lawn. Abutin died in 2006. Is it possible your mother voted in 2014?
There's no way.
Abutin's daughter Maravik says it's certainly impossible that her mother voted, but the LA County Registrar confirms they have signed vote-by-mail envelopes with her mother's name for the 2014 and 2012 election. even though she died 10 years ago.
So it's not some crazy conspiracy theory to think that people are illegally voting inside the state of California. And with the state receiving millions of illegal migrants, the opportunities for fraud now are even higher as millions of undocumented people are living inside of the state.
So what do? They punish the whistleblowers, like the lady who registered her dog. Well, okay, that's illegal, but she did it to highlight the fact that the signature verification and the voter registration process is absurd, and that anybody can register even a dog. So what do? They prosecute her for defrauding the elections system, just like they prosecuted and jailed Tina Peters in Colorado. She rotted in prison for over 3 years, and now she's got serious health problems. I mean, Tina Peters is right up there with Jan 6 as one of the most demonic acts that has ever occurred in our nation's history. I think the people that did that to her should have to pay a significant price. I hope that she is going to sue them civilly and that she can get a good judge that will follow the facts and follow the truth. Well, Nick Shirley also showed up at a conference in Washington earlier this week. It was to talk about fraud. And while he was there, he encountered Colby Covington. Now, I don't know if you're a UFC fan. I have to confess, I'm really not. I could not have picked Colby Covington out of a one-person lineup until I watched him with Nick Shirley. But it is really worth listening to. I have become a UFC fan like instantaneously after listening to Colby Covington. I wish you guys were listening to us on Getter. You could see our live stream, and you wouldn't have to imagine the person on the other side of the microphone there as Nick Shirley was talking. That lady that he was talking to, she was an elections worker in California. For the people that have joined us on Rumble and Getter and Facebook, YouTube, X, and Instagram, you can see the live stream and you can see the people that Nick was interacting with, just like you can see this clip of Nick with Colby Covington. Now listen to what this young man has to say. He's a fighter.
How did you go through that about not becoming a sellout? Because you could have just said, like, I'm not going to speak out against anything. And you could have continued making millions and millions of dollars from these partnerships. What made you like, it's all right, I'll miss out on a few million?
Because I think once you get to a certain level of success and wealth, that you don't need any more. I have a house, I have everything that I need in life. I'm happy, I don't need anything more. I don't need a bigger house, I don't need a nicer car. I'm happy with everything I have. So now I just want to stand for truth. I feel like when we meet, God one day, He's going to judge us by our actions here on planet Earth. So I just want to make sure I'm a good person, I'm a son of God, and I do the right thing and stand for truth.
I mean, could anybody say it better than that? Is that not a wonderful admonition to everyone listening to this broadcast today, for all of us to do our part to help save our country and its values and our Constitution and the Bill of Rights? Folks, we've got to. We absolutely have to stand up to the evilness that we're seeing played out on a daily basis, whether it's in the Straits of Hormuz or the Lego dealer in Oregon, or the people that are stealing an election in California. I mean, it surrounds us. I used to think, and I believe, I don't know, I used to think that this sort of thing was the exception, but it seems to become so commonplace that it is infusing itself and becoming part of our culture. That's dangerous. We cannot allow that to happen. If it's not going to happen, it's going to take each and every one of us standing up and pushing back. All right, so Jesse Waters told us that the war in Iran is over. He was really relying on what President Trump said. Let's play that clip, Anthony.
Trump just called off strikes in Iran at the last second and has announced all parties have agreed to final points of a deal.
We just made a great settlement of the war with Iran, and we're going to be subject to finalization of documents, which should get done over the next few days. We'll probably have a signing maybe in Europe.
Trump told the Post a deal is pretty much wrapped up, and top brass in Iran have approved a draft agreement. The terms extend the ceasefire, immediately reopen the strait, and in 60 days, Iran has to downgrade their uranium to 0. We don't lift the blockade until the uranium's vaporized.
Well, so that's to be celebrated. When Trump went on television from the White House and announced that this deal was imminent, the stock market skyrocketed. I mean, it went to the moon faster than SpaceX, and it was up like almost 1,000 points. So, and oil has already started to come down. All right, so now here we go again. Trump has told us, according to the Independent, he has told us on over a dozen times that the war in Iran would be ending imminently because they've gotten a deal done with Iran. Then Iran sends out its press release saying, no, we haven't. We're nowhere close to a deal. So there's been this back and forth tug of war that has been going on now for a couple of months while this ceasefire, that's not really a ceasefire, has been in play. And CNN and CNBC, I hate to give them any credit for anything, they claim that the number of times that Trump has said that exceeds 35 times, followed by Iranian officials saying, no, there is not a deal. This time, folks, it feels differently to me. And is that one of those lies that would be a deal breaker for you? I mean, Trump clearly lied. I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, he can't say that we've got a deal that many times and for Iranian officials to come out immediately and say, no, we don't, for Trump to be thinking that he's telling the truth. He did. I mean, he couldn't, if he's getting that bad of information from his people, he needs to have a wholesale firing of the people that are telling him that. But I don't think that's the case. I think that's Trump being Trump. And are those deal breakers? Are those the kind of lies that I resent that Trump says? No, they're not. I don't know what Trump's strategy is for saying that. I think that in part, one interpretation could be that, well, when he says that we've got a deal, and then Iran comes back and says, no, we don't have a deal, it makes them look like deal breakers, like they're the bad guys. That's probably maybe what is in Trump's mind. It's gamesmanship. People will say, oh, that's Trump lying to the American people. No, that's Trump trying to help get a war ended with a terroristic nation. All's fair in love and war, right? This is war. We are at war. All is fair. And if Trump thinks that he can shape public opinion around the globe with our allies and world leaders by saying that, oh, we've got a deal, we've got a deal, we've got a deal, and the Iranians coming back and say, no, we don't have a deal, we don't have a deal, we don't have a deal, that makes them look like they're the ones that don't want to make a deal. I think that's what Trump's strategy might be. Maybe he has some other idea up his sleeve. I'm not sure. But this time feels different. And while this broadcast is taking place at this very moment, Vice President Vance is in Europe trying to finalize and negotiate a final deal with Iran. And so I really commend all the parties for their hard work, from President Trump on down, for his entire administration. Say what you will about Trump. The fact of the matter is, I truly believe that he does care about humanity. I truly believe that he cares about human beings. Now, he can be really rough on human beings, and I can tell you that he makes some mistakes, like we talked about with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey and now Nancy Mace. I don't think our party should be the kind of party that doesn't allow dissent, that we can't have open debate on critical material issues without them being labeled and run out of Congress. I just don't. I'm remaking that point again. Anyway, so Trump is not without his faults. He is flawed like all of us. We're all sinners. None of us, don't throw rocks if you live in a glass house. But President Trump has said now that he sent Vance to Europe to hopefully sign a deal with Iran. That's going to politically play pretty well for Vice President Vance's presidential aspirations. That one kind of caught me by surprise, frankly. I mean, I would have sort of thought that maybe Marco Rubio would have been given that role to go as the Secretary of State to negotiate the final peace agreement with Iran. But instead, he sent Vance. And that's going to play very well for Vance politically, unless you just never know. You got to think 2 and 3, 4 moves down on the chessboard, unless it turns out to be a crummy deal. And the one thing is for sure, regardless of what the deal says, I don't trust Iran as far as I can throw the house I'm sitting in. They're going to break it. It really doesn't matter what they say and what they agree to. They're going to go back on their word. But Trump is smart, and they ain't getting squat until they deliver. You know, we've got a lot of Iran's assets, their sanctions. We've got a lot of leverage economically, and not to mention militarily. Military is the last option that we want to use. But Trump's not going to give them squat until they do what they promise. So if they want the sanctions lifted, they're going to have to return the uranium to the United States. And if they want the sanctions lifted, they're going to have to open the Straits of Hormuz, and they're going to have to get right with God when it comes to the price of oil. All those things are going to inure not only for our benefit, but really the entire globe. And it's time that this evil nation be neutralized. I think we're on the verge of having done so. And congratulations, President Trump, Secretary Rubio, Vice President Vance, the whole group, Jared Kushner and the special envoy to the Middle East, Witkoff as well. I mean, these are all very smart, dedicated, patriotic people to whom we owe a debt of gratitude, I truly believe. All right, so finally, what does Trump get in return? You would think that he would get a ticker tape parade down Wall Street. Instead, someone etched into the lawn in front of the Washington Monument, I believe it was in front of the Washington Monument, between the Washington Monument and the White House, 8647. I guess James Comey is still lurking. I guess he's still walking the grounds in Washington. But seriously, I want to know who did that. That is a threat against the President of the United States. And I cannot imagine that they're not a whole bank of cameras covering that area. I suspect that we already know who did this. And Anthony told me they're trying to use some sort of technology to link the marks in the ground with the soles of some people's shoes, Anthony? I don't really get the technology angle. They're just testing the grass. Testing it for what? They use Roundup, for God's sakes. I can see that all the way from West Palm Beach, Florida. Send me up there. They don't need an investigation. I'll solve that. But we need to know who, and they need to be drug into court and charged. I don't know what the charge is, with a terroristic threat or whatever the charge is when you threaten the President of the United States or encourage violence. That would work for me. All right. Our new sponsor to The Truth is Ness's Hemp. Now, folks, somebody told me about hemp oil, and I said, I don't know, have enough time to listen to this stuff. But darn if I didn't have some places on my body that I didn't like, that, you know, my dog gets all these little bumps. Now that I've gotten old, I get these little bumps. I don't know if it's pre-cancer or if it's just stuff old people get, but I'm not kidding you. I dabbed a little dab of Ness's Hemp on those places, and darned if they didn't contract about 50%. That's right before I went to the dermatologist, and she burned the rest of it off. So I don't know how long it would have taken for Ness's hemp to have completely eradicated it. But this stuff is worth looking into. I have a very open mind towards it because I've had good success with it. Now, Ness's Hemp is a Chicago-based hemp company. Don't worry, y'all. It doesn't have any THC in it. You know, weed comes from somehow from hemp. They're related, but hemp doesn't have THC, so don't catch your hair on fire over it. And this company was founded by Anessa. And what she has built is really something special. We're talking about clean, high-quality hemp products with no gimmicks, just real ingredients, real transparency, and based on my focus group of one, real results. Whether you're dealing with stress, sleep issues, or inflammation, that's the root of all evil, especially when you get to be my age, or you just want to add something natural to your wellness regimen, check out Ness's Hemp. It has something for you. Head over to nessashemp.com. That's NESAS hemp, HEMP.com. And check it out and see what they've got that might help you. Nessa claims and has data to back her up that it helps you sleep better. And if you're stressed out, it will help calm you. And I know topically it has helped me as I described. So check out nessashemp.com. Now, we got a good show coming up. We got Sam Anthony. He's the founder of this organic news organization. He has recruited 6,000 beat journalists. You know, we used to have stringers and journalists that would work a beat. You're even on the police beat or the court beat or the city government beat. But he's gone out and recruited 6,000 people all over the country. So if you want to check out your local news, you can go to his platform and look for the news in your local community. It's a pretty neat idea. Sam and I, we pre-recorded the interview a couple of days ago. We talked about citizen journalists, like the likes of Nick Shirley, and the future of journalism and the media in our country. It's worth sticking around for. And then Katie Asher is just a lovely lady who I really enjoyed talking to. She has written a book called The Book of Heaven. That's a pretty lofty title, I think. And she's a podcast host of her own show, The Podcast of Heaven. It's a sad tale, but it's a double-edged sword. She has a son. She actually has several sons, but she has a son who developed autism after having taken a vaccine. It's important stuff. It really got my attention. It did. Hey, we also have another new sponsor to The Truth. They're filling up, folks. If you want to advertise on The Truth, just email johngordontruth@gmail.com. We'd love to consider an association with you. We do vet our advertisers, and this one is called Masculine Man Essentials. And they've got a line of cosmetic type products for men, specifically deodorant. And they've got multiple fragrances of men's deodorant. They've got Rocket Man. They've also got Freedom deodorant and Bootlegger Baron deodorant. So I've got it's all roll on. It's organic, doesn't hurt the environment, doesn't have those sprays that emit stuff into the air. And so you might want to check out Masculine Man Essentials. And just before we get to our first interview, I want to take a second to tell you that I'm personally using them. These are premium natural deodorants made specifically for men who want to stay fresh without loading their body up with chemicals and aluminum. I didn't know that spray-on deodorant had aluminum, but That's what I'm told. No harsh stuff, no weird fragrances, just a clean, fresh smell with effective protection that actually works all day long. You know, I'm a tennis player. I play tennis just about every day. I dab a little bit of that Manly Man deodorant on before I go play tennis. Then I do it again after I shower. If you're tired of deodorants that don't work or are packed with ingredients you can't even pronounce, you need to check these guys out. Go to masculinemanessentials.com and use the program code TRUTH for a discount on your first order. That's masculinemanessentials.com. And we'll have that link in the show notes for you as well. You know, the fact of the matter is, girls just don't like guys that smell bad. They just don't like smelly dudes. So if you want to impress the ladies, make sure you get some Masculine Man Essentials and use the program code TRUTH so you can even get a discount in the process. All right, well, let's get right to it now. And here is our interview with Sam Anthony. We continue to hear that the mainstream media is dying, and someone who's helping speed their death is my friend Sam Anthony. He started his own platform. It's called Your News. Sam, welcome back to The Truth.
Good to see you, John. Glad to be here.
Thanks. So how's it going? Since the last time we spoke, how's your platform evolving?
You know, so we've picked up a lot more creators. I mean, the last time I was on was probably 3-4 months ago. I think it was right before the event that we went to at Trump National. And we probably picked up about 1,000 new creators. More importantly, the traffic has grown. Last month we had, I think it was 1,670,000 visitors. We've added new technology where people can follow the authors on the platform. People have their own author page. You're on my platform, so you have your own author page and a way for people to follow you. So it's been expanding and growing, but it's really because our marketplace, these people have nowhere to go. You know, there's 500,000 people on LinkedIn for just the U.S. that call themselves freelance journalists, and that means they're looking for work, right? They don't have jobs. So I deal with it all the time.
Well, you know, I remember when there used to be like, I guess we called them beat journalists that would follow the news in their local community and they would write for the local paper. But so many of those newspapers have now been bought out and they're part of a big conglomerate like Gannett or whoever. And so that beat journalist has kind of gone by the wayside. And sounds like you're trying to fill that void.
Well, I am filling the void. I have 6,000 news reporters, John. 6,000. Think about that.
Spread throughout the U.S.
Spread throughout the U.S. There's roughly 20,000 cities across the U.S. So if I had one person a city, you'd have 20,000. So I mean, the growth here, the potential for growth, I estimate. You know, you probably could have maybe 1 million, you know, about 50 people a city. Obviously, some cities like New York and Chicago and Miami and Detroit will have more people than, you know, a smaller market. But yeah, about 50 people a city. So at full scale, you're probably talking a citizen-powered press of probably 1 million news reporters in just the United States alone.
Wow, that would be amazing.
Crazy.
So how are these 6,000 that you have currently segmented? Are they subject matter journalists or are they geographical? How do you view these individual journalists?
So when they sign up, you know, right now we're in our infancy. I mean, what I don't need is 100,000 people that are doing the Monday Night Football game, right? So at some point in time, we're going to have to get our arms around. Yeah. So, but for the most part, most of our news is local news. It's all. It could be like a new restaurant opening up. People do movie reviews, theater critics. It's whatever your passion is. I have people that are, you know, they do fashion news. It's not about me. I'm a platform, and if you go to yournews.com and mouse over local or national news, you'll see all the different topics. John, I have people do auto racing, NASCAR. That's it. That's all they do. People that do IndyCar, people that do home and garden, food and wine. And so it really depends on the particular person. If somebody's writing a story about somebody's Little League game, it's not national news, it's sports news for that city, whereas the high school game is going to be sports news for the market. And then the Monday Night Football game is national news. So it's really, I would say 99% of my content is local news. The 1% is national, but that's a lot of people.
How do the consumers find out about it?
It's the same way they find out about people on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. It's a creator-based platform. Remember, the legacy media is going out of business. And the reason is, you could say it's because they're lying, but it isn't. It's because it's an antiquated product. Just look at the numbers. Everything is moving to creator-based platforms. YouTube, we had this conversation. 60 million people have channels on YouTube. Let me say it again, 60 million people. TikTok and Instagram, over 100 million people. So the people that put up the channel are telling everybody to go to their channel to watch their show. But now you have 60 million people promoting it on YouTube. And as people come in, they start looking around at other things. So I'll give you an example. When somebody posts their kid's Little League game on our site, and I'm using this as a simple example, that content's going to be shared with grandma and grandpa and all friends and family. Well, when they come in to your news to consume that content, they're one click away from another section. And maybe they like auto racing. Maybe they like business stories. Maybe they like entertainment. So as a friend once told me, you're like Amazon, you're like the mall. And people come in for specific things to pick up an item, but then they're going into other stores and checking it out. And that's really what this is. And so a perfect example is, I have people that do NASCAR news. That's it. And they have a following on socials, and they're bringing all their following over to me. Well, I'm really getting big in 2A. I'm talking about Second Amendment gun news, because all the gun people have nowhere to go. So I have, this is just from another journalist. The other journalist had signed up and set up an account, and I called them. I said, how'd you find out about this? They said, Sam, you have some of the biggest names in journalists on your, in 2A journalism on your site. I said, who the hell are they? Right? I don't even know. But here's the point. The point is, people that watch NASCAR, for the most part, shoot guns. And the people who shoot guns watch NASCAR, right? It's like, so people might be coming in to watch this show, which we do audio, video, or print, or read an article about 2A, and next thing you know, they go over to sports and click on auto racing, and there's more content for them to consume. It's no different than you going to YouTube and watching your video and then moving over and watching somebody else's video. It's the same thing. We're just under topics: sports, business, politics, entertainment. So it's pre-searched. And then because our niche is local, we could drill down and publish something to a specific geography as granular as a city.
You know, it's kind of amazing to me the way that things have evolved. You know, if you were going to do a story and you ran a network and you wanted to do a story on fraud in Minnesota, you'd send a big truck with a satellite on top, a news camera, technicians with sound and lighting. And then there's a guy, 23 years old, Nick Shirley. He shows up with an iPhone and a portable microphone, and he's getting millions of views around the world. Times are really changing, aren't they?
It's all moving to creator-based platforms. He broadcasts on X, right? That's how this works. So imagine what you just said. You're talking about somebody who's 23 years old, who's never went to journalism school. He's never worked for any radio station, TV station.
I don't think he graduated from college.
No, and yet it took an individual to go out and uncover all the fraud, and these big networks couldn't even find it, or maybe they weren't looking.
Or maybe it's just too expensive for them, because their business model, I mean, I think, you know, it's kind of like the airlines used to be. You know, we had a conglomerate, or rather an oligopoly of Delta, United, American, I guess there was TWA and maybe one or two others. But they didn't have a monopoly, but they had an oligopoly. And then along came JetBlue and what's the other one? Southwest.
Okay, Southwest.
And all these discount airlines, and they figured out how to do it as good but cheaper. And now citizen journalists, they don't have the overhead that a big network has.
No.
And they're able to get in there and do the grunt work and just put it up on YouTube or on your platform.
You hit it on the head. They're leveraging platforms for distribution and monetization. That's it. So you don't need a big overhead. And, you know, not for nothing, you're on YouTube. There's 61 million other people on YouTube. How many of them do you think went to broadcast journalism school?
I ventured to.
I mean, percentage-wise,
0.0001.
Right. So,
I mean, I did take journalism in college, but I wasn't a journalism major. But regardless, the fact is that, you know, just fundamental economics dictate that the low-cost provider is going to be the survivor. And we're seeing people like Nick Shirley. Also, I asked you about this kid, Reckless Sam, who is has great content, and he is going in and routing out and exposing people that do dishonest things in business. Reckless Sam, that's right. And what did I say, Anthony?
Was it Dan?
Oh, no. Well, whatever. You go back to sleep. Reckless Sam. Oh, no, Reckless Ben.
Ben.
No, you're Reckless Sam.
I'm Reckless Sam.
He's Reckless Ben. Thank you for helping me out there, Anthony. Anyway, so he goes in and he's exposed how this business ripped off a dying man. They had taken his Lego collection on consignment. He had to sell it. It was worth like $200,000. His obsession in life was collecting Legos. And then he got a dreadful disease. And so his son went and got his Lego set, gave it to this company that was going to sell it for him on consignment. They started to do it. He got a little bit of cash. But then the store went out of business. The franchisor came in and they said, oh no, these are our Legos. You can't have them. And he exposed it all, and it's just become a huge worldwide news story. And, you know, I just don't think that CBS or NBC would have ever covered this.
They wouldn't have cared to. And, you know, remember, you know, back in the 80s, there was 500 independent news outlets. Today, there's 6. The reason we're in the mess we're in today is because of the mainstream media either lying or not reporting things, okay, for whatever reason. So everybody saw the St. Clair Broadcasting where you had the 50 TV saying the same thing at the same time. So we live in something, John, called centralized news, where you had this roll-up of the media industry with just a handful of institutions that are now controlling the narrative, and all of it's being dismantled, not because there's not a demand for news, it's because of new technology. The reason you don't send a telegraph is because somebody created a phone. That is the actual reason. And the reason these institutions are collapsing and all these people are out of work is because there's still a demand for news. It's just consumption's changed. And like you said, the overhead is so much lower for Nick Shirley, right? He just pulls up in his car and walks around and starts interviewing people. And so the platforms is where everything is headed. And like I said, YouTube had 3 billion people on it last month. So that attracts money. The money goes where the eyeballs are going, and they're not in mainstream media everywhere. Look at all the newspapers that have folded. I mean, most of them. I mean, we're just left with, you ever see the Palm Beach Post? It's like this thick now. It's like 2 pages.
Don't you think, and you alluded to it, that just the fundamental dishonesty of the mainstream media is that people are really rebelling against that? I mean, they're still telling us that Oswald acted alone and killed Kennedy. The fact of the matter is, I don't even think Oswald was in the sniper's nest. But and I watched the lady on what is it? Not 60 Minutes, but on Sunday morning, the news show, Meet the Press.
Meet the Press, right.
And Trump just absolutely decimated her because basically she was just lying through her teeth. Completely. She said, oh, you tried to turn over an election with no proof. And she just kept saying, no proof, no proof, no proof. And there is a mountain of proof. And the mainstream media continues to feed us a bunch of baloney.
It's a
don't
shame.
You think people are rebelling against that?
It completely. I mean, now that's not the reason they're going out of business. They could have been telling the truth. The net result would have been the same.
Well, we'll never know.
Well, we will, because the money goes where the people are. And so, you know, all you have to do is look at the age demographic between 25 and 54. And the amount of people in that age bracket last year, first quarter, for all network television stations combined, was 500,000 people. That's not my numbers. That's the numbers coming out of the ratings. So they're migrating somewhere else. If you have children, ask them what they're watching. Okay, everybody knows it. The kids are watching, they're watching TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. They're consuming information completely different. Why do you think all the network TV stations all have YouTube channels? Okay.
For sure.
Okay, I have 3.
Well, you know, we're on YouTube also, and we can't get traction. We can get no traction on YouTube. And
it's because of your name of your company, The Truth with John Gordon.
Yeah.
They don't want truth.
What a horrible concept. And so while the mainstream media suppressed the truth, now we see some of these platforms doing the same thing. You know, Twitter would cancel people if they criticized the vaccine. And I ran for political office. I put a political ad up to introduce myself when we first announced our candidacy. YouTube wouldn't show it. They throttled us. To this day, they throttle this show. We've been doing it for 3 years. We've got a paltry couple thousand subscribers. We've been on Getter for 3 months, and we've already got 5,000 subscribers. I mean, there's proof positive that we're being throttled. How do they get away with that? Where is the marketplace for truth?
The marketplace for truth, look, it's going to be everywhere. You know, as a content creator, I always tell them, you need to have your stuff everywhere. You need to get it out there. Now, YouTube is definitely a place. There's 3 billion people on that site last month.
It's too big to ignore.
Okay, but Getter doesn't have anywhere near that, yet you have more traction. It's because your stuff is being released. And so, you know, then you have Rumble, which is the same thing. I mean, but they're growing.
Our Rumble channel is growing. And we had a video a month ago, and we got over 2 million views on Facebook.
I heard.
YouTube won't even show it. It's crazy. Now, how are you going to do it better on your platform? How do you resist the temptation to bring your own bias to the marketplace?
Well, so when it comes to bias, our platform is a citizen-powered press. And I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. If you have an opinion, we'll publish it, even if I agree with it or I disagree with it. But it's going in opinions. On the other side...
My wife should get on your channel.
She should.
She's definitely got opinions on pretty much everything, especially related to me. But anyway, we digress.
So, you know, the whole... People ask me, you know, how do we know if it's factual? I said, well... Look, you know, how could I possibly know what happened at any city council meeting anywhere in America? If somebody's reporting on it, I wouldn't know if it's accurate or not. But the public will let you know, John. The only thing a journalist has is their credibility. The moment they lose it, it's over. So let me ask you this question. This will answer the whole thing for you. If you started lying to your audience, how fast would they leave?
I don't really know, because I haven't tested that theory.
Okay.
All we do is work really, really hard to tell the truth. And we question ourselves at every turn to make sure that we're being as factual as we possibly can.
And that's all people want. And it's okay if you make a mistake, but if you're out and out lying, nobody's ever going to watch your stuff. So we never get what I just described. It has not come in yet. I'm sure there's going to be people that put up information that's BS. The only emails I've ever had were people threatening me, telling me to take stuff down because it was factual. It was bad.
So what about the libel laws? Do you not worry that somebody could be mad at their brother-in-law and make stuff up and put it on your platform?
So on our platform, when you submit an article, before it gets approved, you have to accept the terms. And the terms are that you're responsible for your own content, just like on any other platform, because how could we possibly know? And then if we find out that you did something wrong, we just remove the content. That's it. So the precedence has already been set. I think just Comcast just won something that was very similar.
And do you find yourself having to review or remove content for inaccuracies?
In the last 3 years, one time because it was somewhat slanderous. That was it. But other than that, nothing has been removed. Matter of fact, I've had 2 threats for lawsuits. I even sent it to the people. One guy said, I want that removed. Well, you know, I don't know why he wanted it removed. He was running for political office, and he was arrested for beating up his wife and drunk driving. And I had the
sound like perfect qualifications to be a public servant these days.
So wait, it gets better. So he wanted me to remove it because he didn't want people to know. Okay, it was public information. Then you know what he did? He created an account on our site and started posting news. his own news. I don't mind, right? If he's running for political office, let us know who you are.
So what's your vision? Where do you see your company, your news, in 5 years?
The legacy media will be all but gone in the next 5 years. It'll be a shadow of what it is today. What will replace it will be a hyper-local news platform, most likely global, but will deal with the U.S. With a social component where the public can interact and share in the narrative locally, because that's what they want. It'll have a monetization model like YouTube and all the other platforms where citizen journalists can submit their work freely without being censored and get paid for it. And a self-service ad platform where somebody can buy an ad and target it to one zip code and anywhere in between. What I just described to you is what we already do. Our niche is local news, and we do it at scale.
I think it is a great idea, and obviously so does the consumer, because you're growing at pretty rapid rates. So thank you, Sam Anthony, for coming back on and updating us. And where do people catch your news? How do they find
Well, I'm always looking for more content creators. So if you're a content creator and you're interested in, becoming a citizen journalist on our platform, you would go to yournews.com, go to the bottom and click Become a Citizen Journalist. There's a couple videos that you could watch which kind of explains it. And then if you like what you hear, you can fill out an application. For people that invest in opportunities, there's an invest button down there. Takes you to our equity crowdfund page where you could read about it. And if you want to make an investment, you can spend $300 or anywhere in between.
And if you're in Peoria and you want to find out about last night's Little League game?
If we have it, and if we don't have it, somebody should sign up and start producing it. So think of it this way, there's 20,000 cities in the United States. I have 6,000 news reporters.
You're on your way.
Right, so, like I told you, the hardest one is getting the first one. Now I'm at 6,000. I have, almost 1.7 million visitors last month, which was almost a jump of 250,000 from the month before. I'll be back on your show. We'll have 10,000, we'll have 20,000, we'll have 50,000, we'll have 100,000. And when you're at 100,000, you're probably you're probably 10% of the way there. That's crazy, right? So that's scale. And so those creators is what drives the audience, which attracts ad revenue. Sure. Look, make no mistake about it. The legacy media is going to be gone. It's all going to platforms. My niche is local news. The content that we carry, you can't put on Substack, you can't put on YouTube, you can't put on Rumble. It's just not, the church bake sale is not YouTube material, right? It's not. So it's the local news, but then I'm the local paper in every city in America with USA Today wrapped around it.
I heard Scott Pelley may be looking for a job. Maybe you should call him up.
Oh, I already got it set for him. We created a fake news section, and he could start publishing immediately.
There you go. Sam Anthony, and it's called Your News, and you can find it at yournews.com. And that is the truth. I'm John Gordon. Today's broadcast studio sponsor is Bone Frog Coffee. You know about it. If you grind through the day like I do, you need that perfect pick-me-up without the jitters. Grab Bone Frog Coffee. And best of all, coming up on our 250th anniversary, and where all our patriotism is going to be on full display, Bone Frog is veteran-owned, founded by Navy SEAL Tim Cruikshank as a tribute to his fallen teammates in the Naval Special Forces community. Each bag tells a story and gives a peek behind the curtain of special ops. If you don't already know it, the Bone Frog is a sacred symbol of the SEAL teams, and that represents those who gave their lives in combat and is a reminder of the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom and the American ways of life. Every bag, premium, small batch, roasted from top shelf Arabica beans, smooth, low acid, no Robusta junk. Think bold blends like Frogman Dark Roast or classic Bone Frog Medium. Tastes like freedom in a cup to me. Helen and I start every day with a couple of cups of Bone Frog coffee. And here is the real deal. A chunk of every sale goes straight to helping SEAL vets and Gold Star families. They're aiming for $500,000 to be raised. Coffee with a cause? You bet. That's not a slogan. It's brotherhood brewed daily. Head over to bonefrogcoffee.com, snag some K-Cups, whole bean, or merchandise. Be sure to use the promo code TRUTH. Start your day like we do Fuel up, stay sharp, and remember, service before self. Support our vets, and thank you, Bone Frog, for sponsoring our studio. Check them out now at www.bonefrogcoffee.com. This is one you're going to want to stay tuned for. You know, I have the habit of counting my blessings every day and giving thanks for all the benefits that I've received in life. Some people may have thought that Katie Asher would be deprived of that, but she made an astounding discovery. And it happens to deal directly with one of her 5 children, Houston, who is autistic. This is a topic that I am so uninformed on and not aware of the main diagnoses, the breadth, the scope. I just have these vague notions that people like Elon Musk are somewhere on the spectrum, whatever that is. Katie, can you help shed some light on this? Katie, by the way, I should tell you, she is a mother of 5. She is an author, and she has her own podcast called The Podcast of Heaven. That's pretty bodacious.
It is, isn't
Broadcasting live from heaven. Here she is, ladies and gentlemen, Katie Asher.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate that. Really, our story begins with my son's severe neurological injury when he was an infant from vaccines. That's where it all started. And, you know, before that, the book that we wrote, it's called The Book of Heaven, which is why the podcast of heaven, the Book of Heaven, that's kind of the whole theme of it. And our intention is certainly not to step in and take the place of any, you know, theological teaching. What we are trying to do is center back to the Word of God and let that be our source for everything. And all of the things that we discuss are really just going back to understanding how science and scripture are actually consistent and why these non-speaking autistics have so much to teach us that's actually in scripture. It's not adjacent or in addition to, it's actually of scripture.
I had no idea. So where in scripture do you find it? Does it talk about autism in particular in the scripture?
It does.
Well,
it
enlighten
actually
us.
Specifically does. For example, first you have to understand what is autism. I think that's where
Let's start with that, because that would help.
So, and instead of what the DSM-5 has done, which is basically throw every single thing every single, you know, issue or anxiety or difference where it becomes completely ambiguous. Severe autism was actually diagnosed and identified by Leo Kanner back in 1947, and he identified very specific traits that were observable, and these included a loss of eye contact, a loss of social interaction, anxiety, sensitivity to noises, a strange gait, very specific things, an inability to verbally access, you know, words. They would lose speech, and an overall withdrawing from the world. That was what was originally identified. What you see now with the DSM-5 is really nothing like that for most of the actual diagnoses, except for that 26 to 30% that we would be called profound or severe. And that's what my son is. And his injury came from vaccines when he was an infant. It started with the DTP and became progressively significantly worse with the MMR. When people ask me, well, how do you know it was a vaccine injury, right? That's one of the main ones. I said, well, he was developing perfectly normally. Then he got a shot. Then he broke out in these little red spots. We end up in the hospital, and a hematologist said, your son either has leukemia or immune thrombocytopenic purpura, which I didn't know what that was.
Don't feel bad, neither do I.
She came back and said, he has immune thrombocytopenic purpura. This is a vaccine injury.
Oh my
and what it
gosh.
is. Yeah, and of course at the time we didn't know what the long-term effects of that
Vaccine
were
for
gonna be.
what?
DTP,
What is
this
DPT?
diphtheria, pertussis, tetanus.
Was I vaccinated for DPT?
DTP and
DPT?
maybe not.
I don't
Um,
think so.
we were not vaccinated with nearly the number of vaccines that children are vaccinated for when my son was vaccinated or even now. So
I mean,
it's
I think I
unlikely.
had like maybe 3 vaccinations.
Yeah,
What's that
most
one
of
on your
us.
arm that leaves a little tattoo?
Mhm.
That one?
Yes, that was
I
the
know
smallpox.
smallpox. And then I know we went to my grammar school every Sunday for 3 or maybe 4 Sundays after church to get a cube of sugar that
For
had
polio.
a vaccine on it for polio.
Yes,
I
which
don't
they've
think
actually
I-
found it was
I don't think I
totally
was
ineffective.
vaccinated for much else beyond that.
Yeah, that's because our immune system is actually made to handle an incredible amount of variants, as well as, I mean, our bodies are made to heal. That's what it's designed to do. And the vaccine is, in fact, vaca, the root word comes from cow in Latin. And what they originally did was this man had this Jenner is his name, had this fantastic idea that, gee, the cow maids don't get smallpox. So maybe the pus on the cows helps them to not get smallpox. So they took the pus from the hooves of cows and they injected it. They literally scraped off the skin and put it directly into the people's bodies, many of whom died, many of whom became tragically ill. All of this is gone through incredible detail. The whole history of medicine is detailed, in modern day medicine, is detailed in Dissolving Illusions by Dr. Suzanne Humphreys. It's an incredible book. I encourage everyone to read it. It's over 700 pages. It's filled with graphs that actually prove the evidence that we have all been under an illusion that vaccines are the way to protect us. And they are not, because they actually bypass 2 different levels of the body's immune system, which are incredibly important in the immune process. This is why pertussis, part of that diphtheria, pertussis tetanus shot, this is why everyone's getting it now, even if you've had the vaccine, because there was actually a whole ecological system that required other people who had a natural immunity to be part of that immune process, which is what most people had. What they've learned is that almost all of the credit that vaccines have been given for, saving humanity from disease is undo them. And it's actually due to improved nutrition, improved environmental standards, improved living conditions, improved maternal health, improved sanitation in particular. All of these things are actually the factors that improve normal health in an individual and helping them to be able to resist any kind of attack on the body as far as an illness or any type of infirmity. So that is what we actually need to go back to, is health and wellness, and not injecting our children with neurotoxins. And that's the issue.
So who prescribed the DPT vaccine for your son?
That would be the doctor, just the normal wellness
His
check.
pediatrician?
Mm-hmm.
And,
I went in.
and you said, well, who am I? The doctor says to get him the vaccine. Was it required? Did the schools require that vaccine for admission?
Well, at 8 months old, he really wasn't being required to go to school.
But eventually, would they have?
They would require it. And my son actually received the live cell, which was later changed to the DTaP. What people don't know is that the DTP is the actual shot that is responsible for the 1986 vaccine vaccine manufacturers immunity law. It was the DTP. At that time, so many children were being injured by that shot for their lives, completely neurologically destroyed from the DTP that and there were only 3 vaccines being manufactured at the time because so many people had pulled out for childhood vaccines. There were only 3 different vaccines being manufactured, one for each 3 different companies. Letterly Laboratories, which was eventually bought by Pfizer, was facing at that time in 1986 liability in court cases 200 times their profit.
Oh my gosh.
And Congress chose to protect the profit of vaccine manufacturers instead of children. They set up a vaccine court where they then proceeded to say that the actual injuries that are associated with these vaccines wouldn't qualify for the vaccine injury court. They specifically named autism. At the time, all of these things that were called autism, what people didn't realize, they thought they were intelligence. They thought it was a lack of intelligence because the child couldn't speak and the child wouldn't respond.
That must just have been heartbreaking. We're also very excited to welcome Nessa's Hemp as a advertiser on our show. And you know, I don't put my name behind something unless I actually believe in it. So when I tell you about Nessa's Hemp, I want you to listen up. Nessa's Hemp is a Chicago-based hemp company founded by Nessa. And what she has built is really something special. We're talking clean, high-quality hemp products with no gimmicks, just real ingredients, real transparency, and real results. Whether you're dealing with stress, sleep issues, or inflammation is the enemy, or you just want to add something natural to your wellness routine, Nessa's Hemp has something for you. And right now, in our city, head over to nessahemp.com. That's NESAS hemp.com and check out what they've got. Use the promo code John at checkout for a discount, and that's just for our listeners. Nessa's Hemp, homegrown, honest, right there in Chicago.
So in 1986, when the bill was put before Congress that Reagan signed, at the time, there were only 3 vaccine manufacturers of childhood vaccines, and each of the 3 manufacturers only manufactured 1 vaccine. Letterly Laboratories is who produced the DTP vaccine at that time. That is the same company that produced the vaccine that injured my son. Pfizer is who ended up purchasing Letterly Laboratories. At the time, in 1986, whenever that law was signed into law, Letterly Laboratories was facing lawsuits in total 200 times their profit. The entire purpose of that law was not to protect children. It was to protect profit. That's what they were doing. They knew they couldn't make the vaccines safe. The reason why they can't make them safe and why they still to this day cannot make them safe is because of the actual nature of the immune system and what they use to trigger the immune system to react. What they use is neurotoxins. They use aluminum adjuvant, aluminum hydroxide. Aluminum has an atomic number of 13, which means there are 3 electrons in the valence shell. That makes it highly reactive. So what it's trying to do is fill the 8 possible spots that it has available to fill in that shell. So it starts stealing electrons. And when those cells have electrons stolen, then they steal electrons. And this causes a massive chain reaction. It's a chain reaction that they use to trigger the immune system, but it's one they can't control. The macrophages, which are mobile immune cells, can attach to these electrons and bypass the blood-brain barrier and take those straight into the brain. That triggers a cytokine storm of interleukin-6. The very first thing that interleukin-6 starts destroying is the myelin sheath on the neural motor pathways in the brain. That is the regression that parents discuss. That's what they report, is they lost skills. That's because the myelin sheath on the neural pathways was destroyed, making it impossible for those motor pathways to be executed. Then it causes encephalopathy. Well, encephalopathy is really serious. This is why it's serious. The normal part of our developmental system is that whenever we come into the earth, we are souls in bodies. That's just how it is. And that we're basically, all of us have like millions and millions of sensory synapses. And that's to know where your body is in relationship to the environment and where your spirit, is in relationship to your body. And as you begin to develop, these neural motor pathways begin to form between the sensory and the motor system. And you have foundational motor, like being able to hold your head up and being able to lift, like keep your head straight, and then being able to lift your head up and have your tummy, on the floor and be able to stabilize yourself, and then bring your hand to your mouth. Those are the foundations of all motor. Whenever you have encephalopathy, basically the inflammation prevents those sensory synapses from pruning, and it prevents the neural motor pathways from integrating in with the sensory. So what happens as the baby begins to develop is their pruning does not happen, and then the motor integration doesn't happen. So they fail to be able to develop the ability to motor plan and execute motor, which leaves them trapped in their body. And that's, of course, why neurotoxins are horribly dangerous to, among many other reasons. But the interleukin storm of IL-6 actually keeps going, and it destroys the mechanisms in the liver and the kidney and the gut lining, which all contribute. Of course, the gut is where the actual neurotransmitters are produced. So again, the gut can't produce the neurotransmitters that the brain uses to execute the motor. And then you have the toxins leaking into the system, like ammonia and things like this. Well, the body can't detoxify. So you have basically, the body is being flooded with neurotoxins, some from the actual toxins itself, but also some from the body itself. And all of this contributes to the inability to integrate all the different systems together to have the volitional control over your motor. Oh, and I forgot. The other thing it does is the encephalopathy damages the 12 cranial nerves in the brain. In particular, the optic nerve and the amygdala, and all these other nerves that are associated with the different regions of the brain and the different sensory systems. That, of course, distorts what the baby can observe and what the baby is sensing. And for example, in my son, whenever we were able to hear what he was actually experiencing, he kept talking about his blindness. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he said, my alternating eyes. I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, it wasn't until we went to a vision specialist that I found out that one of the injuries that had occurred that I knew nothing about was damage to his optic nerve. He saw 3 of everything. It moved, it all overlapped, and he would go blind, which means his vision would totally suppress and he would lose eyesight. This is from the encephalopathy, which vision has a huge impact on your vestibular system. What's that? That's where you are in space.
All right, let me see if I've got this straight.
Okay.
We're talking to Katie Asher. She is a mom and an author, and her son, Houston, who's now in his 20s, got a vaccine when he was an infant.
8 months old, yes.
8 months old. I think that qualifies. Mm-hmm. And she got that for her son because her son's pediatrician recommended it.
Correct.
Go ahead.
When we went in for because of course we immediately ended up in the hospital. So when it came time for his MMR, I didn't want him to have it because of his reaction. I said, I don't believe his immune system is capable of processing this. And instead of listening to myself, I listened to my pediatrician, who said that was a fluke. There's nothing to worry about. And that's when.
So just Yeah.
So that's when
That's when.
literally he started getting rashes all over his body. He lost total control, had chronic diarrhea. That's when the fecal smearing started. That's when he started screaming. That's when he started looping. That's when everything started.
At 8 months.
It started at 8 months. He lost the ability to clap. I remember that was the first thing, and to roll a ball. But whenever he got the MMR, that's when I started to see all the horrific effects on his bowels and the rashes everywhere and the screaming.
This is a very hard story to listen to.
It was harder to live.
That was my next point. I am certainly happy. That's not the right choice of words. I am voluntarily willing to hear the story, and I have great empathy for you.
Thank you.
I'm sitting here trying to put myself in your shoes, which I cannot. But as I listen to your story, you're a good mom. You did what the pediatrician told you to do. It did not work out. The doctor glossed over your son's reaction to the vaccine.
Yes.
And then the vendor, what was the name of it again?
Letterly Laboratories.
Letterly.
Yes.
Which got bought out by Pfizer.
Correct.
Probably because they were about to go under. But you say that the United States Congress, those people that we vote for and instill our trust in, instead of looking for accountability, that they gave Letterly Labs a free pass and effectively made a law rendering them immune from lawsuits.
Not only that, but they set up a vaccine court, which was supposed to be the alternative to holding the vaccine manufacturers responsible for a product that they put a neurotoxin in. And then the government mandated children, infants who don't have an advanced developed neurological system, be injected with neurotoxins. But they established this vaccine court, which took away our constitutional 14th Amendment right to due process, equal rights under the law, as well as several other clauses within the Constitution. And I have yet to have any single lawyer explain to me how a Congress or a president can take away a constitutional right that's guaranteed. I don't know how.
Who was president?
Reagan.
Who was president when the Reagan? Well, that's disappointing.
It is disappointing. I was very upset when I learned that. And
I would prefer to have heard that it was Clinton, Obama, or the likes. But I happen to like Reagan a lot. But I don't think he was perfect. I don't. And I've been vocal about his shortcomings on the truth here recently. But not to. We don't need to go down that path right now because there's so much more important things to talk about. So I don't know how, Katie Asher, you were able to sit here and engage with me as calm, collected, and logical as you were being. I'm not a violent person, but I'm telling you, if someone does something to my children or my wife, it could provoke me into violence. I don't know how you resisted the temptation to go get a chainsaw and visit Letterly Labs or make some Molotov cocktails. I mean, they effectively destroyed and took from you your child.
They didn't just take my child. They took my life as well. They also destroyed the lives of all of my other children. And they made us, and this is the part that people don't understand, is that once you have a severe diagnosis like this, that your life is utterly destroyed by every single institution we have. You are now a captive of the state. I am now a slave of the state. Which state? I live in Georgia, but I'm also a slave of the federal government. How do they do that? Because to receive any kind of support for the damage that they caused, I am now in their system. I'm denied justice that I should have by right, by law. I'm denied that due process. And instead, I am put into the system where I'm not even allowed to receive funding personally to care for my child. We can only pay other people. They do allow us to have a family member receive, support or payment for the help that they give, but they have to pay taxes on that money. We have to pay a fiscal agent to monitor those funds, and we have to pay a consultant agency to come in and monitor whether or not I am doing a good job. I have to take notes that I provide. We cannot
They're
leave the state.
critiquing the job that you do.
Correct. And after the money
That's rich.
yeah, the money that my son, who's the employee, is $39,000 before taxes, and we still have to pay 3 different agencies from that. So there's nothing, basically.
I'm so sorry.
It
is disturbing beyond words.
Well, this is why when this topic of fraud comes up, that we find it so completely just absolutely, I don't even have a word for it. It's infuriating on every level.
Well, it's in your face. I mean, they're not even trying to hide what they've done.
There's several components to it. It's not just cut and dry. There is no one that is okay with fraud. We, the parents who are recipients of autism services, are against fraud for multiple reasons. What we're upset about is that instead of going after the actual mechanisms by which this is happening, they are now putting parents under even more scrutiny. I have to take daily notes on the care I give for my son. I have to give notes for every single therapy session he attends. I have to provide individual support programs that outline every single activity he does. I have to account for, what does your son eat? What does your son watch? What does your son do with his time? Who is he with? Where does he go? Does this sound like I'm living in a free country? Or does it sound like the free country that I should have been a member and a citizen of took all of my rights and my child's life and my life away?
It's just so wrong. It is just so wrong.
Hannah Pauling, do you know that name? Hannah Pauling.
I don't recall.
Okay.
I don't know that name.
Hannah Pauling was a little girl who was also injured by the same vaccines as my son. It's around the same time, same age. Her father was a neuroscientist, and he worked with one of the expert witnesses for the vaccine court. This particular case was used as they did these test cases where we're going to say who gets qualified to have their case heard before the court and who doesn't. They took Hannah Pauling's case out, gave their family $20 million plus $500,000 every single year for the rest of her life, and then dismissed all the other cases, even though they were all the exact same injury from the exact same vaccines. And the reason why was because her dad knew somebody.
All right, so this horrible thing happened to your son and to you. Mm-hmm. What transpired? He's now in his 20s.
He's 29.
But you told me off camera that his cognitive ability was relatively intact. Did I understand that correctly?
No, more so. And it actually goes back to why I was sharing that part about the vestibular system and the sensory pruning and the integration of neural and sensory. So what happened was I didn't know anything. I took all of my understanding from what I observed. And what I observed was someone who was severely injured, who had an inability to have a conversation, an inability to self-care, who was self-injurious, who flapped his hands, who put his hands over his ears, who screamed, who made horrible noises, who would run away constantly, throwing himself into danger. He was hit by a truck. We had several near drownings. the amount of vigilance that you have to be on with severe autism is 24/7 at high alert. That's emotionally and physically a type of fatigue and exhaustion that people don't even understand. And it's not PTSD, it's perpetual traumatic stress disorder. You're never able to get out of the stress. So I was making all of my observations on what I observed. He was kept in a self-contained classroom at school, denied all real opportunities to learn and have an education. Because guess what? All IQ tests are motor-based. That's another really interesting thing. You would be surprised by all the different industries that profit off of severe autism. For example, the cognitive assessment industry itself is over $2.4 billion, projected to be $30 billion not too long from now. The ABA industry, which is the ones who categorize autism as behavior and an intellectual disability, they are worth $6.73 billion annually, and that's a late number. That I think that's from 2023 or 24. I haven't gotten the new numbers. And then, of course, we have the vaccine manufacturers who make $54 billion a year from childhood vaccines alone without any liability whatsoever. We have a whole nother set of different industries that all profit off of the injuries done to our children. So I was observing all of that, right?
Yes.
And when he was 17, I was working 3 jobs. I was a single mom at this point, and I was totally and utterly exhausted. And I had this event in my life where someone had basically encouraged me that my thoughts had the capacity to affect my circumstances. And I was extremely doubtful of this idea. But
there's a book on that very topic called The Secret.
Yes. And essentially, I was dismissive of that, but they gave me the question, which was, what is a table or a chair before it's a table or a chair? Most people say like the raw material, like the wood or the plastic or the metal. And they said, well, actually, it was a thought. And the second question is, if no one had ever had that thought or that idea, would the table or the chair exist? And I was like, well, they wouldn't. Actually, they can't create themselves. They're created things, so they have to be created. So that was the one idea I had that was really tremendous to me. And I was wrestling with that idea. And I came home from working one of my 3 glamorous jobs, and I'm totally being facetious. I was getting up at 4:30 a.m. to train people at a gym and waiting tables at a pizzeria. I mean, I was doing everything I could. And I came home and I laid down on the couch. Houston was 17 at the time. And he came and he sat down at my feet. And he was perfectly calm and still. He wasn't rocking or flapping his hands or making any of his noises. And I knew it was odd, but I was honestly too exhausted to even comment. And suddenly he reached over and he tugged at the blanket just like you would to get someone's attention. And I opened my eyes and he was looking directly into my eyes like he hadn't since he was an infant. And he spoke. And he said, Mama, I love you. And when you've waited 17 years to hear your child say your name and tell you I love you, you pay attention. And I did. And that was my permission to myself to believe in a miracle. The miracle came 4.5 years later when I learned about spelling. And for those who don't know what it is, it's basically you coach their motor, because that's what the injury caused, was a injury to their motor systems, which are multiple systems that have to coordinate together. But you coach their motor to begin to point to letters. And as they're pointing to letters, they're spelling out words and they're telling you what they want to communicate, as opposed to the myelinated motor of the things they've repeated over and over. The first words my son ever communicated that were his own were an answer to the question, if you could put any slogan on a t-shirt, what would it be? And my son spelled, I'm in here. He was 21 years old, and that was his first independent words to me.
Wow.
Right.
So does that, or so back to my earlier question, do I hear you correctly that his brain was intact, that he could see, hear, process, but he was unable because of the lack of motor skills to verbalize his thoughts or to communicate?
His spirit and his intellect were completely intact. His motor system was extraordinarily deficient. Not just deficient, but also injured. And
Yes.
here's the next part explains it in a little bit more depth. And the reason why this is so critical is we make observations based on what we observe. And we make the assumption that the person that we're observing is having the same sensory experience that we are, right? Like if you see something, you assume that the person next to you sees the same thing, right? And they're reacting to the same thing. Even if their reaction's different, you still think that they're observing the same thing you're observing. This is where it gets interesting. So fast forward, I'm doing all these lessons with him, trying to get to know my son because I'm desperate to know my son after 21 years. And I ran out of lessons. We were doing so many lessons. I just ran out. And so I was using anything. And it was around the 4th of July. And so I start using the Declaration of Independence. And I said, do you know what the famous phrase from the Declaration of Independence is? And he spells it out. And I was like, yes, that's right. Wow. Like, how much do you know anymore? And he starts spelling out the Declaration of Independence. And I'm like, where is this coming from? And he starts just literally, like the amount of information coming out of him is not just repeating back information. It's cognitive depth of understanding of principles and ideas. For example, he explained that Locke and Voltaire and what they understood about, the source of power, and that it comes from God, and that this is actually where people's rights come from, is from their being made in the image of God, and that they have inalienable rights, and that those are attached to their nature, not their ability.
Well, where would Houston have acquired that knowledge?
Yes, where does that come from, right? We think that everything we know comes from being taught.
From a book.
From a book or something, right?
Or YouTube. In this case.
And of course, I'm not saying he wasn't on YouTube. He was on YouTube a lot. And he certainly was on, the internet and everything else. He absolutely was. But it was, what I'm pointing out is that what was inside this chaotic body, this motor system, was a fully intact human being who didn't have the ability to process their motor. And their motor system was overwhelmed because their sensory was overwhelmed. And this is where we have to change and shift our understanding of autism. So one day I asked him, how do you know so much? I mean, really, like, where is this all coming from? And
he could be a good interviewer, or you could, actually.
And I said to him, do you just have really good hearing? And he spells, I'm special. And I'm like, as a mom, right? Of course you are, right? And he's like, you don't get it. And he said, I can hear thoughts. And I was like,
oh my God.
I was like, are you lying? That was that was not very encouraging as a mother, I have to tell you. I'm not my proudest moment. He said, you don't get the kind of gifts I have if you lie. So I start testing him. I test him over and over again. I test him with just things that were going on around our house, if he knew what was going on. I tested him on, I had my daughter text me something. He spelled it out perfectly. I had my son's friend come into the room, and I said, just sit right there, have a thought in your head. Houston, what is his thought? And he spelled out the young man's thought. And I said, was that what you were thinking? And he said, yes, pretty much exactly. Then I asked about my son, one of my other sons, and he spelled dead men don't talk. And I said, is that what you were thinking? And he said, no, he's saying he's not going to tell secrets. And I'm like, oh, this is so much bigger than I'm even realizing. Well, that night when I went to bed, I suddenly realized, oh my word, all those years ago, what they had told me was true, is that thoughts are things. what that means is that thoughts are energy. What E equals MC squared means is that energy and matter are the same thing, just manifested in different ways. That means that thoughts obey the laws of energy. And the very first one is the law of conservation, which says that it cannot be created or destroyed, only transferred. Our thoughts become things. So that was the
wow,
beginning.
this is some heavy stuff, girlfriend. So let me ask you, did Houston's yelling and acting out and abnormal behaviors continue after he was able to spell?
They did, but he was able to explain to me what was happening. So
That's what I wanted
so
to
he
know.
was able to explain what was happening. So then I was able to do things to help his body and to help him heal. For example, he started talking about my senses are illuminated. So when his body would just lose total control, what was happening is he was processing way too much sensory, which causes the body, it's too much, it's more than the body can process. So the body just becomes completely out of control. The other part is without the vestibular system, the proprioceptive system won't work. So a lot of kids are called lazy or aggressive, but that's actually the amount of force you're using. So if you don't demonstrate enough force, they call you lazy. That's actually proprioceptive. If you exhibit too much force, that's called aggression. That's also proprioceptive. But if you have no awareness of where you are in space or how much force you're using, then you can't possibly be held responsible for something that's out of your control or even your perception. The other part of this, what that means is, so your vestibular system it's your body's GPS. And the way the vestibular system works is you take in visual information and auditory information. Houston is seeing triple of everything. It's all moving. He's sometimes going blind, and he has synesthesia. Synesthesia is and that's because the sensory synapses didn't prune, okay? But it's basically when the body processes input through multiple sensory channels. For example, he hears what he sees. He tastes what he sees. He sees the energy on everything because everything is actual energy. So he's processing far more information than the rest of us are. That ability also gives him, because he's very loosely connected to his physical body, he's connected to what we all are, which is everything comes from spirit. That's the whole point of everything is an idea or a thought before it's a thing. That's true with us too. Everything is a thought before it's an actual thing. And so his connection is far more attached to that spiritual, metaphysical connection than it is to the material connection. And we think that like everything in the material world is really all there is, but actually nothing in the material world can exist apart from spirit.
So I'm just thinking, and I'm a little reluctant to say something for fear of being insensitive or saying the wrong thing.
It's okay. I'm very gracious about things that aren't.
You seem so. But it almost, I'm just, trying to intellectualize what I've heard and draw conclusions from it. It almost sounds to me that you're describing Houston as having been trapped in his own body.
Yes.
And unable to communicate his thoughts, needs, desires, questions. And I'm also thinking if that were the case, that could make, if I were him, that could make me very frustrated and may cause me to act aggressively or inappropriately as a means of trying to express myself. Is that
is
remotely
absolutely part of it. That is absolutely part of it. But it is also a lot of comorbidities that are existing in the physical body that are causing what they would call behaviors. For example, if you look up what is toxic levels of ammonia cause in the body, and you'll basically look at a list of symptoms of autism. A lot of these, the inability to process your motor, of course, that would lead to an emotional trigger. And what happens, right? Or if you're experiencing all these thoughts that are negative around you, And all these, oh, and guess what else is energy? Emotion. And you can feel everybody's emotion. And that's actually what the word means is energy, in motion, emotion. So you're getting all of this energy coming at you. It's too much. It's very depressing. It's very debilitating and demoralizing and discouraging. What does that do to you emotionally? Well, it triggers your amygdala. And that, of course, triggers all of these other things like the limbic system and all these other different processes in the brain, which cut off access to the frontal lobe and basically put you in a state of fight, freeze, or flight, which is exactly what they do.
Wow. You seem like you have acquired an encyclopedia of knowledge surrounding autism.
It's
not only the biology, but the physical, the physiological.
And the quantum physics, don't forget that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, how did you gain all this knowledge? Where did you go to find it?
Well, I knew, first of all, Houston was the source of him telling me things and then me trying to go and understand what he just told me.
Wow.
For example, he explained how he felt like he was falling out of his feet. So then I was trying to figure out about the magnetic fields. I was trying to figure out, the neuropathy in the body and in the different nerve cells. What is the density of the nerve cells, in those who've been injured neurologically, like all these different capacities, and then how these different systems work. But the biggest part is understanding their abilities, and that a lot of times they're reacting to something that they're experiencing in the metaphysical world as opposed to the material world. And there's all kinds of examples of that, but a lot of it is hopeful and some of it is a terrifying reality that there's a spiritual war going on all around us. And what we have to recognize is that when Houston started describing scriptures, not as somebody who was who had memorized a scripture, but as someone who had witnessed something, that was really revealing to me. But people ask, when did you first realize? And I would say, so there was this one morning where I was running late for work, and I said real quick, and my daughter was rushing in. She was running late, so of course I was running late. And I said, do you have anything to say to me before you go? And he spelled out, all the angels do is talk about you. And I literally said to him, I don't have time for this. And I put the spelling board down and ran out the house. And within between 90 seconds and 3 minutes, I was struck head on and hit a second time. And then my car flipped 1.5 times. And I was literally my hand on the asphalt and my head like lying on the asphalt, like with the bar of the car underneath me. And, I end up in the hospital. My daughter's contacted. She's of course completely freaking out because everything would be on her, and she knows that. So she's in the hospital with Houston, and he's just like calm as could be, absolutely no worries, like he could go have a beer, like he was that chill. And she goes, aren't you worried? And he spells out, calm down, she's fine. And she suddenly realized, she goes, you knew. And he said, don't be mad. It had to happen for God's wonderful plan to work. So when I get home and she tells me all of this, I'm like, okay, I need to know, like, how much do you know? How much? And he's at first kind of reluctant, like, how much do I share with you? I don't know if you can handle everything I have to say. And when he first begins, I felt like I was almost in a test, right? And he said, well, one of the main things in heaven is the making of new chances to give us. And I was like, oh, okay. And I suddenly realized his mercies are new every morning, right? And then it was like that over and over again when he would start describing something from heaven. And then I start realizing, oh my goodness, he's describing what scriptures talk about. There's so many examples, but it's not even just the scriptures themselves. Although one time he was really upset, and I could tell he was depressed. And I said, what's wrong? And he said, I had a vision. And I said, well, shouldn't that make you really happy? And he said, many times I have a good vision, but sometimes I have a frightening one. And so I said, well, what was frightening? And he described the two roads diverged. He literally described it. And I went, you actually saw? I think it was Matthew 7. I said, you actually saw that? And he said, maddening. You're wonderful to try to stop it. And I was angry because I'm like, I'm not stopping anything. I'm mad at God. You know, like, I mean, I'm throwing my own little temper tantrum here. And he kept pushing and pushing at my heart to change my hurt and my doubt. He told me, he said, all your thoughts are rotten. And I was, of course, really upset about that because
That's kind of cold.
I agree. And you have to understand, I've been through hell, like severe trauma.
I feel you.
So I wasn't really a positive, gee, everything's going to be okay and upright and wonderful and yay. I was what's going to fall next? You know, that was my perspective. What bad thing is going to happen next? And he told me, he said, when I said that, he said, I was talking about your doubt. He said, your doubt literally destroys the very things you're praying for. And, you know, in the beginning, you were asking me, you know, I said, we're really just trying to get people to go back to what scripture says. And you said, is autism in the Bible? And I said, it is. And I said, well, first you have to understand what autism is. And Luke 14, when it talks about the great banquet, he, you know, the master sends out his servants into the street or into, you know, to get all the important people to come. And everybody's got something more important to do, but they're all doing their own will, right? Everybody's doing their own business, their own will. They're not worried about God and doing his will. And so the master gets angry and he sends a servant and he says, bring in, and this is the New King James Version, the blind, the maimed, and the lame, and then the poor, and it goes on and stuff. Literally, severe autism destroys their optic nerves. It destroys their motor planning, which completely destroys their ability to move, which is being maimed. And of course, that affects their gait, which they have all kinds of strange gaits. It's literally all three of those, but that's who he brings in, and that's who he shares the kingdom of God with. That's who he lets them see behind the veil. And then you have in 1 Corinthians 1, where it says, for God has chosen the foolish to shame the wise and the weak to shame the strong so that he will be glorified. And then in Acts and Joel, I think, where it says in the last days, he has sent his spirit out and he has made old men dream dreams and young men see visions. And he has done this right in his scripture for all of us to see, but none of us believed it. And another example is in Mark 9, where the father brings his son who throws him, he's a mute, and he throws himself into fire and water to kill himself, right? That literally describes what severe autism is like. And the father said, your disciples couldn't heal him. If you can, will you have compassion and help us? And Jesus's reply was quite indignant. And he said, if I can, all things are possible for the one who believes. And the father passionately said, I do believe, help my unbelief. What he needed was help to believe something beyond what he observed, to be able to take his mindset and have it so firmly gripped in who Christ is and what Christ accomplished for us and all of his promises, that he was not concerned about what he observed, the disaster of his son's, motor system and the destruction that came with it, but he was fully confident on what Christ was going to do. That is the promise of God. That is what Christ accomplished on the cross. That is what is possible for all of us.
That's a very powerful message. That's some really powerful stuff. I should end there, but I've got a couple of questions I want to ask on the way out here. Just as I was sitting listening to your story and listening about Houston, I just, myself included, we talk more than we listen. Even though the adage is God gave us 2 ears and only 1 mouth. I just wonder if part of Houston's specialty, that what makes him special, is that he doesn't really have the ability to talk. He can only listen, and now he's learned to communicate.
No one is as good as hearing God's voice as he is, and he also said that he spent his entire life observing. Yes,
exactly.
These young people have spent they know they are completely normal human beings. They just have severely damaged neurological motor systems and the capacity to perceive more energy than those of us who are neurotypical, who have gone through the full pruning sensory process.
So how do you measure autism? They talk about someone's on the spectrum. Is the spectrum a numerical value, or?
Well, I think I've heard different responses to that, and I want to be very sensitive to anyone who faces any anxiety or injury of any kind, and I don't want to be dismissive to anyone's pain. So I'm very careful about how I categorize this. I don't think that a lot of these sensitivities should have been grouped together in the first place. I think Leo Kanner's original diagnosis should stand as it did for all of those years, and it should be by itself. Back then, when in the early, 80s, 90s, you started getting some developments in the DSM, and you had autism, and then you had pervasive developmental disorder, and then you had Asperger's. These were 3 separate designations, and they should have stayed that way. And I think that for anyone who has, who's taking, a lot of people are taking in more sensory, but they can't explain the metaphysical. So they're seen as too sensitive or too emotional or not in self-control, or they're given all these labels by psychologists. And those are inappropriate because it's, again, the person on the outside making a designation of behavior, and behavior is all motor. Behavior implies intent, but if you don't have control or you're experiencing more sensory input than someone else, then it is inappropriate to be labeling that as a behavior. So the way the system works is you take in sensory information, you process the sensory information, you execute a motor plan, and then the motor plan or you choreograph a motor plan, then you execute it, pick up more sensory. And this is going on at like a rate that we can't even fathom all the time.
So I still, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I got off on a little bit of tangent.
No, it's okay. So if I've heard you say several times that Houston is severely autistic.
Yes.
Can we quantify it? Is it on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 to 100? I mean, does it defy quantifying, or just because
I don't like the scale because I think we're all talking about different things. One person could be sensory averse and somebody else could be sensory seeking. Those could both be at a high level, and they might both be a 10, even though what they're actually experiencing is totally different. We need a different way to quantify what they're experiencing. But ultimately, if someone doesn't have the capacity to motor plan in a way that they can meaningfully communicate the depths of their heart, mind, and spirit, then I think that we have a case of severe or profound autism.
Okay, so I'm just, trying to take this and overlay it with my layman impressions and probably a lot of misimpressions.
I think the way to do it is to have an understanding of that the person, the human being, is a tri-being. You have a mind, a body, and a spirit. All of these are interconnected, and what you're experiencing in the material world, as well as the emotional world, as well as the intellectual world, is all mixed together. And so it's extremely difficult to quantify all of these things. But for someone who does not have the ability to self-care, self-regulate, plan their motor, and communicate effectively with speech or writing or sign language, and they have to have the support of an outside person to be able to communicate, then this would be considered a profound motor disability. I like to categorize it as a sensory motor condition of varying levels.
All right, so you look at someone like Elon Musk, who we referred to earlier. I mean, there's a sense in our general consensus, I think, that we often refer to people with autism as gifted. And you've certainly described Houston as very gifted in many
He's
ways.
extremely gifted. They themselves will describe autism as a gift because they're able to perceive so much more than the rest of us. Their conceptual understanding is far greater. Their ability to see patterns, their ability to see the interconnectedness between everything around us is so vastly superior to a neurotypical's. But they say that the inability to control the motor is the deficit.
Mm.
Elon Musk does not have an inability to effectively motor plan. He's quite capable of that. So that's why
he
I don't
seems like a
consider it the
very
same.
effective communicator, actually.
Me too. Yeah.
In 2026, the age of the it's more than AI, really. It's the world of the computer chip. Is there hope that perhaps technology could be a contributor towards enabling Houston to be able to communicate his thoughts effectively?
Well, he does communicate quite effectively by pointing to letters to spell out what he wants to say. As far as using a chip or something like that, he's not exactly a fan of an alien artifact being placed in his brain to extract his thoughts. He's not a fan of that. It's something that he and one of his coaches have discussed and had some interesting conversations about. His focus is not on an adaptation or a tool, but on focusing on the promises of God for healing. He wants to heal. That's where his focus is.
What a conversation. I've done, I don't know, 450, maybe close to 500 interviews. This interview, legitimately, is one of the more eye-opening, and I'm struggling to come up with the adjectives. I'm just bowled over. I'm literally bowled over. I've had a very distant awareness of autism. I think that being the judgmental sort of people that we tend to be, that I probably have just, it's been easier to put it out of my consciousness than learn and focus about it. But your story is beyond fascinating. And I just really appreciate your coming on The Truth today and sharing it with us. You've authored a book. It is called The Book of Heaven. That seems kind of presumptuous to me.
Doesn't it?
But you wrote it. Maybe, but you co-authored it with Houston.
I did. And
so maybe it was his insights that led to the Book of Heaven.
he wanted to write a book about God's love. And I said, okay, great. We'll write a book about autism and how it's been misunderstood and all about spelling and all these things I learned about the neurological system. And he said, if I can't write a book about God's love, I refuse to write. And I was like, well, I'm not going to put us at risk and reveal all this other crazy stuff and everybody's going to think we're nuts. So I'm not going to do that. So we were at an impasse. And so basically, Houston demonstrated his incredible faith and exactly what he wanted happened. I lost my job. I lost everything. And he spells out to me, literally minutes after I've been fired, and spells out, "Now the good can begin."
Oh my gosh.
And I'm
My
like
God.
staring because I'm like, I need a job. And he's like, and everyone, and then literally, I'm not kidding you, within, I think it was just a couple of weeks, the whole world shut down for COVID. And so there I was trapped in my house, and I wrote the book. And it was just this outpouring of everything that we experienced and everything I learned. And the reason it's called the Book of Heaven is not just because of the incredible hope and the promises of God that are revealed from Scripture in our lives, but because heaven is going on in us and around us and everywhere. Like the last thing that Houston says in his part of the book is, I think, extremely extraordinary. But he says, "Malevolence and love fight for us. That's what's going on inside us and around us. He gave me a task to tell of what I've seen and to tell of his love, to be his herald. I'm without any doubt friends with Jesus. I don't want anyone to die not being his friend. Most importantly, hear this: anything is possible if you believe."
I'm going to end on that note. That is very prophetic. And I've got chills, literally, going down my back and arms. Thank you so much. And please convey to Houston how much we appreciate him and value him and look forward to learning more and following him. I mean, he almost sounds like a prophet. So you're very kind to take your time to come on to The Truth today. And where do people get the book?
It's on Amazon, and of course, it's also on audiobooks. You can get it on ACX or on Audible. And if you don't use Amazon, you're more than welcome to email me, and I can get you a signed copy. But you'd have to pay for shipping because I'm not Amazon. And so that's asher.house.hope
All right. So let's say it one more time so our audience gets it.
asher.house.hope@gmail.com. And the tag Asher House Hope is on Instagram and TikTok. On X, I'm more political because I'm fighting against, corrupt politicians and vaccine manufacturers and all the other institutions. So I'm a little bit more political on that one. And that's K, capital T, Asher 5. And our website is asher.house, which is really more of a resource for families. And I need to update that and put even more resources on there. But it's a resource for families who have a severely injured child like Houston. And I also want to emphasize that those individuals who have a genetic issue like that inhibits their motor, spelling works for them as well. And I don't want anyone to limit and not presume competence because of a genetic condition. All that genetic condition does is inhibit physiological processes. It does not inhibit intellect. We think it does because that's all they can get out. But that is all a function of motor.
Well, I think you've definitely opened our eyes to those very things. Thank you again. And we will continue to follow your story. And Godspeed and our best to you in Houston. Katie Asher, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much.
That's The Truth. We'll be back right after this.